Campbell Grandin. I am professor of animal science at Colorado State University. And when I was 2 years old, I had no speech, really severe autism symptoms. I can't emphasize enough the importance of getting into early education. If you have 2-year-olds that are not talking, you need to do something about it right now. Don't wait. The earlier you start with children that are not talking, the more effective probably the therapy will be. And you need to make sure they're not deaf. That's the first thing. You got to check for deafness. And then in my therapy, there were basically 4 goals when I was a little kid. Speech, always encouraging me to use my words. Slow down when you talk to the child, because when grown-ups talk too fast, it went into into just gibberish. Give the child time to respond. They're like a phone with poor service. It takes time for it to respond. Also, a lot of emphasis on turn-taking games, learning how to wait and take turns at games, then skills like eating with utensils. And I liked going to therapy. You should get progress in a very young child, and they should enjoy therapy. That's a sign of a good teacher. So I want speech. I want learning how to wait and take turns at all different types of games, and skills, getting dressed, brushing your teeth, using utensils properly. And then later on, when I got a little older, my mother really concentrated on developing my ability in art. You might have some autistic kids that are good at art and building things, other autistic kids that are good at mathematics. And if you have a primary school child who's very good at mathematics, they need to be moved ahead into more advanced mathematics, because if they get bored, they turn into big behavior problems. So little math kids need to be moved ahead. And then you might have other kids that are very good at reading, and they need to be moved ahead into more advanced books. Autistic kids tend to have uneven skills, good at one thing, maybe bad at something else. We need to be emphasizing the thing that the child is good at, because those are things that can turn into careers. And what I'm seeing in some cases with smart autistic kids is doing very, very well academically, but they haven't learned work skills. That needs to start around 11 years old, learning how to do a task outside the family, maybe a church volunteer job, maybe helping out an elderly neighbor, helping out at a farmer's market or vegetable stall or something like that. And then the instant they're legal age, they need to be getting real jobs. They've got to learn working skills. Gradual transitions are always better than abrupt. This is something that's not good. I have seen autistic individuals graduate in college, high honors, and not make it in the workplace because they had not learned any work skills as kids. So that's a very brief introduction, and I would now like to get questions from the audience and from you.
Okay, then I have some question for you. You say, Temple Grandin, that autism is a very continuum, and it's a
Yes,
continuum of traits. So we need in our world different kind of minds, and this
that's
is.
right.
Can you explain what the meaning to the audience?
Well, there's 2 questions here. There's the autistic continuum. You're going to go in autism from Einstein and a famous musician to somebody who's very severe. Now, I learned to talk. You can also have very mild autism, which used to be called Asperger's, but they don't use that term anymore, where there's no speech delay, but the child is socially awkward. Then you can get individuals who never learn to speak, but they can learn, some of them can learn to type. This needs to be encouraged. Now, I'm not suggesting this for 3-year-olds, but okay, I want to try to get the 3-year-olds talking. But if the child doesn't, 6 or 7 years old and is not talking, let's introduce typing. And the best thing to use is an iPad or similar tablet, or even a large phone. And the reason why tablets work better is because the print appears next to the keyboard. If I use this desktop that I'm at right now, I look way down here and the print comes up right up here. It's very difficult for them to gaze shift. So that's why a tablet is recommended. They're readily available. You know, you look around, even if you're in a low-income situation, you can usually find old tablets somewhere where maybe the text messaging works on it or a word processor program will work. It's all you need. They usually have a price of free if you look around. But I'm a big proponent of typing and then eventually getting to independent typing, where the person is not touched and the device, the iPad or tablet, is not touched. And then there are also some individuals where they have an autism label and it's probably not the correct primary diagnosis. I talked to a family just a couple of days ago. The child had all kinds of skull and brain abnormalities and had to have multiple surgeries on his skull and has an autism diagnosis. Autism is definitely not the primary diagnosis in that situation. You see, that's another thing. We're making this range very, very broad. Now let's talk about the different kinds of thinking. This is my book, Visual Thinking. I'm a visual thinker. Everything I think about is a picture. Not good at higher math, poor in algebra, poor in higher math. Now, the kinds of things that my kind of mind's good at is art. Okay, Italy has a big fashion industry. So fashion, it's a form of art. Also very good at mechanical devices. Art and mechanics go together. We have a huge need in the US for people to fix elevators or lifts, as they're called in Europe. Broken lifts everywhere. Well, they're very interesting mechanical devices. It's the kind of thing, if you get an autistic child fixated on elevators, he or she can have a career for life. Because what's happening here is we don't have people to fix them. I'm finding broken lifts all around everywhere. So the visual thinkers, like me, are going to be good at the fashion, the art, and mechanical. Then you have your pattern thinker, your mathematical thinker, your child who's a little genius in math, computer science, chemistry, physics. These are the kinds of things that they would be good at. And, you know, designing the next integrated circuit, designing better batteries, designing better solar panels. These are things that the math kids would be interested in. And I want to go take them out and I want to show them solar panels. I want to show them some of this stuff because I want to get them fixated on something constructive like that. Build a solar panel that will last for 50 years. That's the kind of thing that an autistic kid do when they grow up. Then you have your word thinker. These are often the children that love history. They love facts about their favorite sports team or their favorite type of movie. They'll know everything about it. And one of the jobs that they can be very good at when they grow up is specialized retail. And some good examples have been selling new cars. They knew every feature of every car out on the lot. Selling business insurance, selling automobile parts, and they've memorized every product code in the place. Another one worked at a meat plant, and he memorized every product code for all their specialized meat products. Selling business products at a bank, you know, stuff I don't even understand, all kinds of weird investment things. But this individual understood all that stuff and was very successful at a bank selling this stuff. I call that specialized retail because I want to see them get into good careers. When I was out working on construction projects and I've designed a lot of equipment, I worked with people, my kind of thinker, that had their own metalworking shop. They were very autistic. They owned a big shop and they were building things all around the country and they were inventing equipment, not just building it, but inventing equipment. Well, I want to see a kid do this, not just play video games in the basement. Oh, and the problem with the video game players, they're not getting wonderful jobs in the video game industry. They're just getting stuck in the basement.
So temple is important nowadays, I think, to guide children and to guide the parents how to support the children to have a good career. No, if you are good in math, if you are good in music, if you are good in art, what you can
Well, they have to get exposed to things. I read two magazines. This is Nature. This is the premier science magazine. This needs to be in the high schools. They will
Okay.
have to read English to read this, unfortunately. But there's all kinds of interesting things in that. I've read articles on better solar panels. I've read articles on better computer circuits. I don't understand all the math, but I know why they're doing the research. Well, you have a child that's a math kid, show them this stuff. Because students get interested in things they get exposed to. I got interested in the cattle industry because I was exposed to it as a teenager. If I hadn't been exposed to it, I would not have become interested in it. It's just that simple. You show a kid, go to some place where they have a glass elevator where you can see the mechanism, and take the kid there and let him go in the elevator and then let him watch it work where he can see the mechanism. There's a lot of places that have glass elevators where you can actually see how they work. That's how you get a kid interested. They get interested in stuff that they get shown.
And Temple, what about sensory system?
Well, there are
Yeah.
problems with a lot of autistic kids and adults might be sound sensitive. They can't stand a loud fire alarm going off. They may be sensitive to itchy, scratchy clothing. They might have visual sensitivities where they can see flicker on certain types of LED lights. Now, again, these sensory issues are variable. One individual may have sound sensitivity, another individual has visual sensitivity. And the way to find the LED lights that cause a problem is take this thing out here, the phone, and set it on slow motion video. And when you take pictures in slow motion video, you'll find the bad LEDs that flicker. And cost is not the issue. It's just the type of LED. And some flicker and some don't. I don't have this problem. They don't bother me. This is where sensory issues are variable. Now, one of the ways to help desensitize sound sensitivity is to take the horrible thing the kid hates, like the vacuum cleaner or electric hair dryer, something like that, or electric drill, some other noisy thing, and let the individual turn it on and off. Okay, I'm very interested in having some people on the autism spectrum go into skilled trades. Well, let them have the electric drill, and they make the noise, and they drill holes with the electric drill. Or if it's a younger child, they turn the vacuum cleaner on and off. And that vacuum cleaner, which they were scared of, may turn into a favorite plaything when they control the sound. That's the key. The autistic child or adult has to control the sound. And go down to the principal's office after hours and turn up the school bell on and off. For me, the school bell was like a dentist drill hitting a nerve. That was a thing that was bad for me. And then on scratchy clothes, let them have some choice. Wash the clothes that go against the skin. It's a real simple thing to do. In fact, all underwear I buy gets washed before I wear it.
Sorry. I have here this book. Is in Italian. Is okay. Your book. Can you see?
And which book is that now?
Is that?
Okay, but I don't know the title in
Yes.
I don't
When
know what
you
that
talk
is in
about,
Italian.
yes, that you talk about your study in animal, no? You study a lot.
Is that animals in translation?
Yes, animal system, no? Sensory
Okay,
system.
I can't read the Italian.
It's amazing. It's very interesting. There is how to say, a connection, no? Between our, human system.
I'm a visual thinker, and animals think sensory. They don't think in words, but they do have culture. I was just reading an article in my new Science today about birds building nests. And birds tend to copy how other birds build their nests. And they actually have kind of a culture of different ways to build nests that they learn by watching other birds. I just read that this morning. It's possible to have thought without language. There was an article that came out in Nature just a few months ago, 2024, that words are not required for thinking. Mathematical thinking can be done without words, and also visual thinking. The whole visual cortex is turning on. That can be done without words.
So it's important to protect autistic children from sounds, or it's important to expose some children
Well,
to
the best
sounds,
thing
which
is
is the
the
balance.
best
The
thing to do is
balance.
don't just force them into some noisy place, like the train station.
Okay.
Just don't force them into that. Give them some control. And this is where you could use a headset, ear protectors. And you should not wear ear protectors all the time, because that will make sound sensitivity worse. But you can have them with you. So when you go in that really noisy train station, you can put on the ear protectors. And then when you get off the train, you can take them off. Because if you wear them all the time, it makes sound sensitivity worse. So you do not want to wear ear protectors all the time, but you can have them with you. That gives you control. So if a fire alarm went off, then you could put the ear protectors on. You have them with you. You see, control is very important. We don't just shove a kid into a noisy place. All right, let's say a big, busy supermarket. Well, we could take them there at a time of day when it's not busy. And then gradually, as they get used to it, you can take them there when it's getting busier and busier. But let's start out at like maybe very early in the morning when the store is deserted.
Good.
And then you gradually work into that.
Yeah, thank you. In our conference, Temple Grandin, we will talk also about the importance of motor coordination, neuroactivation. What do you think about motor coordination to improve motor coordination also in autistic children?
Well, some autistic children have coordination issues. And then if you do therapy to help that, that's definitely a good thing to do. And there's others where the coordination's normal or pretty close to being normal. I'm a little bit clumsy, and I never got really good at sports.
Good.
Kind of lost interest in that. That tends to be common. And there's a few autistic individuals that love sports and they do really well at them. And this brings up another important thing: friends who shared interests. I got bullied, called names in school, especially in high school. And the only places I was not bullied was activities with friends who shared interests, riding horses, model rockets. Now, fortunately, in my situation, the bullies did not go to horses. There's been good success sometimes with the school band. But then, unfortunately, I just talked to a mom, and her kid was good at music, but bullied in the school band because the bullies went to school band. Where when I did model rockets, fortunately, none of the bullies were interested in model rockets. And then today, that's going to be robotics. So when I did model rockets and I did horses, there were no bullies there. But friends who shared interests, that's where I really important. That's where I got friends. I had friends I went riding with. We had friends where we built rockets together. Or maybe today it's going to be building robots. And when we get back to the different kinds of thinkers, let's think about robotics classes. My kind of mind would make the robot, and the mathematical mind will do the computer programming. So that's an example of complementary skills. The mathematician does the part that they're good at, which is the programming. The visual thinker would be good at the mechanical parts of the robot.
What about the parents? Are parents too permissive today? What about you? What is happening to our childhood in general?
Well, when I was a child, social skills were taught in a much more structured way. Like if I chewed my mouth open, mother told me to close my mouth. And then I didn't understand why it was important to close the mouth. And you have to explain why it's important. But I really understood it when I didn't like watching a classmate chew with their mouth open. And then I understood why you should chew with your mouth closed. But there were social skills in the 50s, in my generation, in the 60s, we're taught in a much more structured manner. And I think this is really helpful. Like, let's say, for example, I've got a drink right here and I stir it with my finger. Okay, I stir
Yeah.
my drink with my finger. Okay,
Okay.
that's very bad manners. Now, instead of screaming no, my mother would say, use the spoon. People think that's disgusting when you stick your finger in your drink.
Yeah.
You see, that's giving the instruction and the why instead of screaming no. I call that a teachable moment. And
Yeah.
that was a standard 1950s social thing. Also, grown-ups corrected the little kids.
Oh, perfect.
Everywhere you went, grown-ups corrected little kids. Like if I was touching too much stuff in the store, the staff at the store would say, only touch the things you're going to buy.
Okay. Thank you, because I'm agreed absolutely with you, because many often we meet autistic child without an educational approach, no, the respect, the rule, and so on. So I'm agreed. Now I have got a question from Professor Crispiani Temple. Give me one second. Professor, come. Vieni, Piero. Fai in italiano nel video. Diretta. No, no, fai in italiano così appare.
Sì,
Ok. Ok.
la domanda che ne volevo proporre
Senti.
è se a fianco della interessante analisi della questione sensoriale, come lei colloca la condizione autistica con la disprassia e le funzioni organizzative motorie.
Professor wants to know, Temple, if there is a connection between a sensory system in autistic child and dyspraxia. There is a connection, you know, dyspraxia, lack of coordination, and so on,
Yeah.
and executive function. There is a connection about you.
Well, let's look at each thing separately. You can have problems with coordination and not have sound sensitivity.
Okay.
It's possible to have that. You might have a kid who's kind of clumsy. Now, executive function, let's kind of get more specific about it. One of the things that is needed in a lot of situations is I cannot remember a long string of verbal instructions where it's a sequence of tasks. If somebody says that verbally, I need to have a pilot's checklist, a written checklist format where you write down the sequence of the things that you have to do. That would be extremely helpful in many, many situations. I basically need an external working memory. And
So,
you can remind
so
everybody that pilots are required to use a checklist.
yeah, sure. So it's important to work with the child not only in one task, but in a multitasking sense. So the child has got the habit to do many things together,
Well,
instructions.
multitasking, there's certain jobs I probably would avoid. A very, very busy takeout window. When you're trying to make change and you're trying to talk to people at the same time, there's plenty of other jobs that don't have that kind of multitasking. Stores that are just chaos during the holidays.
Okay.
I would tend to avoid those jobs because there's lots of other jobs. Now, what one McDonald's manager did, and this was really good, she had an autistic lady that ran the cash register, and when the store got busy, they had her clean tables. They made this very simple little accommodation.
Yeah.
And tables have to be cleaned.
Okay.
And then that got her away from the most rapid multitasking, part of the job when the store got really busy. But there's lots of other jobs. I mean, I've done all my work on designing livestock handling facilities, and when I'm working on these kinds of things, I am not multitasking. I can show you some of my drawings right there. This kind of stuff here.
Yes.
Working on my drawings does not require multitasking.
Yeah, no, I made it. Thank you. Last question for you, Temple, from Professor Cristiani. La genetica che volevi sapere, l'approccio genetico.
Sì, recentemente c'è una nuova ondata di indagini e analisi di natura genetica. Non è la prima volta che questo accade. Che cosa pensa lei di questa fase storica delle ricerche genetiche?
Okay, Professor Temple wants to know about genetic. You know that nowadays there are many researchers and they are connected, many studies in genetics in autism. What do you think about the
Oh,
genetic autism?
it's got a
Yeah.
strong genetic basis, very strong genetic basis. In fact, old studies with identical twins
Okay.
showed very clearly that if you have identical twins, most of the time, if one's autistic, the other one will be autistic. Where
Yeah.
if you have fraternal twins, non-identical twins,
Okay.
one's autistic, the other one probably is not going to be, just
Yeah.
like with brothers and sisters. So it's got a strong genetic basis. It's also a continuous trait. Okay, what they used to call Asperger's,
Yeah.
which they don't use that term anymore, is autism with no speech delay. So you have an individual that's socially awkward. And okay, like nerds and geeks, that's what they call them in the tech world. At what point does a nerd become autistic? When there's no speech delay. There's no
Yeah.
black and white dividing line. It's a true continuous trait.
Thank you. And so environment, I think, is very important, no, for autistic child to live, I don't know, in a classroom, in a safe classroom with not big numbers. In Italy, we have a big numbers in our classroom, and many
Yeah.
often autistic children are in these numbers. What do you think? So environment, it's not only, it's
Well,
important.
the thing you have to look at
Yeah.
is the child making progress. Okay, if I have a 3-year-old that's not speaking, I want to try to get speech, turn taking, and skills like dressing. Now, there's too much emphasis on eye contact. Let's not do all that forced eye contact. All that does is overload the sensory system. And it's not that important, and that will come later. But you have to look at, is the child progressing? When I was in 3rd grade, which would be 8 years old, I was not able to read. And my teacher was very concerned about this. So mother taught me to read out loud, sounding out my words. And she taught me the sounds for the letters. And she read a section of a book, a real interesting book. And then I would read a few words. And I very quickly went to higher levels of reading. But you have to look at, is the child progressing? Is it learning to read? That's really important. I was 8 years old and I couldn't read. That's real serious. You need to do something about that. And we have to look at, the other thing I want to look at with the fully verbal end of the spectrum, where is the child 10 years after they graduate from high school? Did they go to college and then get a job? Or did they go out and get a good job? We need to be doing a lot more work on the learning how to work skills.
So
ideally, that needs to start around age 11, learning how to do tasks outside the family on a schedule.
But what do you think, Temple? And this is my last question. The word understands the autism. What about the future? Or we have to do a lot to speak with people, to communicate to people what is autism. Because I think that the word sometimes tends to not understand autistic people. What about the future?
Autistic people tend to be less social. They tend to get really interested in their special interests. Well, if your special interest is elevators, well, you could grow up and then fix elevators. You get to fix the thing you really like all day long. Okay, that would be something that's very, very constructive, doing that. It's the autistic mind is less social. they get really interested in the things that they do. So I want to get the kids exposed to things that can turn into good careers. Teach them how to program computers. Cybersecurity, that's an area where people with autistic people can be very good at that, but they have to be exposed to it. You see, the problem you've got now is when computers break, they don't show off code anymore. They just show a blue screen, like when we had the problem that, it shut down the airports all around the world, and there's the computer, a blue screen. They call it the blue screen of death, but it has no code on it. You see, in the old days, when computers broke, you'd get screens of code.
Yeah.
And then the person gets interested in that.
Oh,
But when
thank
computers break today, you just get a blue screen that doesn't teach you
Yeah.
anything.
absolutely.
The old computers, the old video games, when they broke,
Yeah.
they'd be screens full of code. And they got exposed to code, and then they'd want to find out what that code was. That doesn't happen today. You
Oh.
have to deliberately expose them to programming.
Temple, this was my last question. Okay, thank you very much for your precious intervention. And we will treasure all this useful information. And thank you for joining us.
Okay.
We wanted to know if on 14 Saturday we can have you alive for 1 minute with the Zoom link to
Next
say hello to
Saturday,
the audience.
I'm
I don't
gonna
know.
be, next Saturday I will be out of town, and
Okay.
you can call me on the phone, and we may be able to do FaceTime.
Okay. Okay. On the phone, you
I have
prefer.
FaceTime
Yeah.
ability, but it depends upon when we do it.
Okay. If you want to
My plane is in the afternoon.
7 o'clock in the morning, your
Yeah, and
time.
that'll be 9 o'clock in the
In
morning
Italy,
on the East Coast.
in Italy,
Probably, you're gonna have to just call me.
I try. I will try to call you. Is okay?
Yep, that's fine. Then we can get on FaceTime. I will do it.
Okay. Thank you a lot. Because
You are
for
very welcome.
yeah,
It was good to
it's a
talk to you
great
today.
pleasure. Thank you from Professor
you.
Cristiani.
Thank you.
And thank you. Bye,
Well,
Temple.
thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.